Hey, what's up, Spartan Nation? Welcome to another episode of the Spartan Nation Podcast. Here with your host Matt Lonsberry and my co-host Aiden McCrone. Another Monday edition of the Spartan Nation Podcast today. Typically we do Sunday nights, but with Michigan State basketball playing against Tennessee last night, we pushed it to tonight. Glad you're here. Glad you're joining us, and we'll get started here. And we're going to talk about both football and basketball tonight, and kind of our reaction to the games that we saw over the weekend. And we'll just have the discussion back and forth as always. Love for you guys to visit our website for more coverage of Michigan State athletics. It's right there at the bottom of the screen. And so when you get a chance, go ahead and visit our site and read what we got to say. So with that, Aiden, we'll get right into it. What do you want to start with? You want to start with football, or you want to start with basketball here tonight?
I don't know. I think we can start. We can start on a more positive note and do basketball if you want.
That's probably a good idea. Let's start with basketball. We'll give our early listeners here something to smile about. So, Michigan State did fall to Tennessee 89-88 in the scrimmage, but it was a scrimmage. I don't think it's anything to overreact to as far as the loss in itself. It's not going to hurt Michigan State's tournament resume or anything like that. It's not going to hurt their ranking. And I think there was a lot of positive to take away from it. A very slow start. Michigan State got down 15-1 kind of out of the gate. I thought Tennessee's length, especially in the guard positions, kind of gave Michigan State some fits. If there's one thing you can criticize a little bit about Michigan State's backcourt, it's guys like Tyson Walker, Jeremy Fears, even Jaden Akins. They're a little bit smaller guys, and I think Tennessee's length in the backcourt kind of gave them some fits, and it took a while for Michigan State to kind of get into their offensive flow. But yeah, it was a good experience, as Keys to Wisdom says in the comments. Playing a top 10 team like that, and kind of a freebie at home. The Breslin Center was excited and rowdy. So I think it's just a good experience all around. Obviously, it was for a good cause as well, with the Maui Charity Relief Fund. That was part of it. I guess what were your kind of early takeaways from what you saw from the basketball game, Aiden, and what are you encouraged by?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd like to believe that if MSU didn't start down 17-1, that this would be a completely different game and that they probably would have pulled it out. But I like how they just fought back. I mean, they were down 3 at half, I think. So, they closed that 16-point deficit. A lot of, positives from the guards. Kind of, we know what they are. Like, they're, Akins, Walker are good 3-point shooters. Hogard can, space the floor. He finds open guys. I think he did well. I know you wrote an article after the game about your post game thoughts, and I know you talked about how Carson Cooper started as well. So that was a positive, and I think the big question that we're gonna have this year, and same thing as last year, is the rebounding. I think the rebounding was still a little bit shaky against a Tennessee team who, they are a top 10 team. And if you want to make, a national championship run, you're going to have to match the level of physicality that a team like Tennessee has, because they're a really physical team. And like you said, they have, large guards. I know Meshack was a all conference defender in the SEC. And, you're going to have to face that level of competition, a lot. And then, that starts 2 weeks from now when you play Duke, and then, once you get into Big Ten play. So I think it's great that they did it for an exhibition game. I think, MSU in the past years, I know they played Tennessee last year at Tennessee behind closed doors. I know they've played Gonzaga before, and I think they played Baylor a couple of years ago behind closed doors. So I think that the fact that it's public and we get to see, I think that's a really great thing. But there are a lot of good takeaways, and it is November, or sorry, it's October still. So it's still there's still a ways to go. And you know how Michigan State basketball is. They start a little bit slow to begin the season.
Yeah, they're playing tough competition early as always. But Izzo did say, like, after the game, he was asked, what did that feel like? And he said it felt like March. Like it was that type of caliber game, back and forth. I think the largest deficit that Michigan State had was 18 points. It was 30-12 at one point. And I'm sitting there watching the game, and us in the media section, and one of the other media guys leans over and says, "Well, what's a good goal, like, to get down, like get this get within by halftime?" And there was I'd say about 10 minutes left. Maybe a little less than 10 minutes left in that first half, and they were down by about 14. I said, well, if you get this under 10, you're in pretty good shape. Well, they got down to 3, which I didn't think they would get that close by half, but got within 2, I think, is the closest they got, and went into halftime down 3. But they showed a lot of grit, showed a lot of just an ability to always punch back. Like it did seem like they were climbing the mountain. So they would get it back within 10, and then it would slip back down to 16, and then it would get back to 8, and then it goes to 12, and things like that. So that takes a lot of energy, but it seemed like Michigan State always had enough juice, offensive firepower to continue to just keep coming back, and that was encouraging to see, because things are going to get cleaned up. A ton of turnovers from both teams. I think Tennessee ended up with 20 on the night. Michigan State had 17. I thought Izzo made a good point after the game that with it being a scrimmage and a game where we found out midway through that nobody was going to foul out in this game because Tennessee's the big guy, I think his name was Adu or something like that. He picked up his 5th foul early on in the second half. And the Breslin crowd's kind of going nuts and holding up 5 fingers and things like that. And then over the PA system, the game announcer says, "Oh, by the way, this is an exhibition. Nobody's going to be disqualified for fouls." So like that kind of made it tough. Like you can be really physical, and if you can't foul out. So that might have played into some of the turnovers a little bit there. A couple careless ones as well. I was encouraged by what I saw from obviously Cohen Carr was really good. He had the best plus minus of any Michigan State player. I think he was plus 22 on the night, which was far and away the best. I saw in the comments section, Eggplant talking about Carr needs to get more minutes. And I agree. Like I would love to see him out there some more. And we talked about this in the offseason, Aiden, about the freshman that we expected to have the biggest impact right away. And my guy was Cohen Carr. I think you probably agreed with me. I think Jeremy Fears, after seeing him play these first 2 scrimmages, I think he can have more of an impact than maybe I thought before getting to see him. I knew he was really talented, but you just are never sure with freshmen, in particular at the point guard spot. But he seems like he's very comfortable and he's not out of his element there. So, I think he can have an impact as well. Didn't get to see a ton of Xavier Booker last night, but he did come in and knock down another 3, which is really encouraging to see because, as we said after the Hillsdale scrimmage, if he can be a guy who can come in at his height and stretch the floor, that's just another weapon and another thing that opposing teams have to worry about. So a lot of good takeaways. And plenty of things to clean up as well, though. And fortunately, Michigan State's got a couple of lesser opponents. There's no other way to put it. These first couple of games, James Madison, and is it Southern Illinois or something or somewhere similar to that, and then you get the big one against Duke. So a couple games to get some things cleaned up, and then we really get to see them tested again by Duke over in Chicago. So what else did you see from the game, Aiden, and what you take away from it?
Yeah, I mean, I have one of my burning questions that we'll get to later was a little bit about Xavier Booker. So I can talk about that a little later. But yeah, I guess for people watching at home, I think it was interesting because they had Izzo on a microphone and had him and Rick Barnes on headsets. So it was kind of interesting to hear their, kind of what they were thinking and kind of what they were talking about during the game because they had them mic'd up during the game. So I thought that was cool. Izzo you know, he was trying to hold it together during the interview. Sometimes he said, I think he said one time, he was like, if we have so many turnovers that we could be a bakery in
Yeah,
the first half. So, but yeah, like you said, it was, you know, sloppy on both ends. And you know, their late surge at the end of the game, obviously down 5 with 11 seconds left, and then they make the comeback. They, you know, the Hogard makes free throws with, you know, with 11 seconds left, and then they steal the inbounds, and
yeah,
Hogard hits the 3 to tie the game. And you know, Trey Holloman fouls him at half court. So, you know, situationally, like obviously Holloman, you know, probably ideally that's not what he wanted to do, and
sure,
you know, knowing the situation. So but it's a great learning experience, I think, especially that there's no harm for losing this game at all. And the
sure.
fact, and like you said, like in the post game, it felt like March for the players, and like just the level of competition. So I think that's really good. And you know, to have, like I talked about, you know, having those previous games behind closed doors, I think having, you know, a crowd that's into it also plays a big role, that I guess makes you more prepared for, you know, going to play Duke in Chicago. And then also, you know, I don't feel as bad either because Kansas also lost to Illinois last night.
Right.
So it's not like they're the only ones that are having, you know, they're, you know, still figuring stuff out, because
Sure.
Kansas is ranked number 1 in the country, and they're still figuring it out too.
Right. Let's talk about that last sequence a little bit because
Mhm.
it was on my side of the court as far as like where I was sitting, and obviously, first like you get the scrum on the floor, and I was a little bit surprised that the jump ball wasn't called because it was on the far end and I didn't have a great view. But then when I saw the TV replay later, I think it was a good job by the officials to kind of continue to let it play out. Tyson Walker kind of gets it out of there. It ends up in AJ's hands. They're down 3. He lets it fly. Everybody in the stadium like goes the anticipation of the waiting. And when that shot went in, there wasn't one person still in their seat at the Breslin
Mhm.
Center. The place exploded, which is, I mean, that was part of it too. Is just the environment that these kids got to play in, and valuable for the younger guys, especially just to have that kind of experience, that kind of caliber game. Again, even though it was an exhibition, it felt like there was something on the line, which again, to have that kind of a free experience like that. But then, yeah, so Tennessee inbounds the ball quickly. They bring up the side. I will say it was definitely a really cheap whistle. As a basketball guy, I don't like it at all in that situation, especially. And it
Mhm.
was a weirdly officiated game. And Izzo made a good point afterwards about it was a tough game to referee because of the situation. It also, it's the first. I would like to, and he said this, like it's early in the season for the refs as well, which I would like to believe that. But when you
Mhm.
watch college basketball around the country, the college officiating, I have a lot of issues with it, but
Yeah.
won't get too far into that specifically. But like as far as the play itself, thought it was a cheap whistle. But I will say, I thought Trey put himself in a bad spot there. Like you can defend that, but he did kind of put his body in a bit, just in a bad spot, and so there was some contact, not enough, I don't think, to draw the whistle in that scenario. But that's a learning experience uh, for Holloman going forward. And I think that's, again, it's a freebie, so something that he can take forward as well. But your thoughts maybe on the foul itself and just how the game kind of ended. It was a little bit deflating, just the way the game ended, as good of a game as it was.
Yeah, I mean, they called it a blocking foul. I think it wasn't like an intentional foul. So I think, you know, part of that was just positioning or whatever. But I do think, yeah, just college basketball officiating in general, like you said, can be, you know, aggravating to
Yeah.
watch, to say the least. And, you know, there's a lot of basketball officials that, you know, are household names like Teddy Valentine and Bo Borowski, and
Yeah.
I feel like I'm missing a few, but I feel like if you're a referee and people know your name, I don't think that's a good thing. I think if
Yeah, that's probably true.
I think you're probably, if you're well known, a referee by the general public and not just by your peers, it's probably not a ringing endorsement about you. It probably means you're bad luck, or not the greatest. So I think, I just think that's what's gonna happen though. Uh, you got to live with it, and it's not it may seem like the reason they lost in the end, but ultimately, coming back from 16 points down to start, kind of scoring droughts on and off, rebounding, having trouble with that. Just kind of all that together is really, the reason they lost in the end. So, again, but this is good because it doesn't go on their resume, and that I think they're better prepared for kind of early in the season where, previous years they've had trouble kind of getting that jump start.
Yeah, there's a couple questions in the comment section that we can go ahead and address here. Eggplant asked about the defensive rebounding. It was a problem, a big problem against Hillsdale. I think they surrendered like 16 or 17 offensive rebounds to Hillsdale, which was alarming just considering the fact that they outsized Hillsdale by so much. They did cut down on that a little bit. Tennessee still had 8 offensive rebounds, which is probably a couple more than you would like, but I think I was encouraged by the steps that were taken, I guess, in this specific area. We'll see if it continues to get better going forward. I do know that allowing offensive rebounds has been a bit of an issue the last couple of years, which was just surprising with the Tom Izzo team, because rebounding has been put at a premium of importance. So. It's something to watch, but I think they had some positive steps in the right direction from the first scrimmage to the second scrimmage as far as that. And then Cooper over Mahdi as far as starting. I did write about this in my observations, and I personally I like Carson Cooper's upside more so than Mady Sissoko. I think in long term, I think he brings more to the table than Mady. But I wrote about in my observations though, the thing that I think might hold him back is the free throw shooting. I think he was 1 for 4 against Hillsdale, 3 for 5 last night, which is better. But that's 4 for 8 on the year. It's 50%. That's a problem. And I know Izzo is gonna put a premium on that free throw shooting, and that's not just, I don't want to make light of it either, because Mady has improved as a free throw shooter. I think he was 5 for 5 against Hillsdale, 4 for 5 last night, or 3 for 4, something like that. So, big guys, you're going to draw a lot of contact, especially on offensive rebounds and putback attempts, and so those are important points that you leave on the table if you're not knocking down your free throws. And so I want to give Mady credit for that. But as far as just Cooper's length defensively is a weapon. He's an excellent rim protector. And I think he's more comfortable on the offensive end as well than Mady, though I will say last night that there was one play where Mady I think he might have gotten an offensive rebound, made a little shimmy shake, turned around and knocked down a nice little fadeaway from about 6 or 7 feet. So I don't think there's a huge gap one way or the other. And I think maybe the thing that is pushing Mady ahead at this point is that free throw shooting. Your thoughts on that, Aiden, and maybe the defensive rebounding as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jackson Kohler being out definitely is huge for early in the season, just because, we know what he can do offensively as opposed to kind of the more limitations, I guess, that Carson Cooper and Mady Sissoko have offensively, just in terms of scoring. And then, like you said, the free throw shooting, Cooper I think he missed 1 or 2 at the end. So I think having Kohler out is, big for early in the season. And I think, that gives the opportunity for Xavier Booker to kind of
Sure.
be in that maybe play a role in that center spot at the end of games, because we've seen him make threes kind of from Midnight Madness, the Hillsdale game, and then yesterday. So I think he has an opportunity there as well. So that's big. And then the defensive rebounding, I think finding somebody else besides the center to rebound. I think having Malik Hall, really his role needs to be just crashing on the boards. Like Cohen Carr has unreal athleticism and might be one of the best athletes that we've seen like come through this program. So just saying that alone, like he needs to be rebounding a lot. So just having that, because like you talked about earlier, the guards are a little bit undersized. Like Akins is only like 6'3", Tyson Walker's 6 foot, and then Hogarth's 6'4", but they play all at the same time. So
sure,
having that, you're gonna have a little bit of less size, relative to the opponents that you play. So it's really important that those two big guys, those two forwards, really crash the boards hard. So I think that's really something they got to figure out, I guess now, and then kind of heading into conference play, when you start playing those more traditional Big Ten teams who are really have a lot of size and physicality.
Yeah, no, and Izzo talked about a little bit after the game too. Like he wants to get his guards more involved with rebounding and helping out the bigs, and I think that's something that Akins can do a better job. He's Akins, he's not a huge guard by any stretch, but he has some like he's built well and he can get in there and help out in the rebounds and things like that. Hogard is traditionally a pretty good rebounder out of that point guard spot. So again, we'll see how that kind of develops and goes as the season progresses. As far as Booker, we were asked about Booker in the comments, playing the 4 or 5. I do think he's more of a 4 right now. Just he's pretty slight of frame right now. He's and I think he would struggle against your traditional bigs right now. But that's why I think him being effective as a shooter so far is so important, because if he is going to be at the 4, you don't want to clog the lane. And so his ability to stretch the floor a little bit is important. I would say, like, I think you made a good point with Jackson Kohler being out to start the year, how that will open up some opportunities for Xavier Booker. I think if Kohler was healthy, I think Booker would have a hard time getting on the floor at this point, just because there is a lot of depth at the 4 and 5 spots right now. And as we've seen the shooting from Booker, but I'm still waiting to see some of the other things as far as the physicality with the rebounding. And I haven't seen him in the post as far as like post up or anything like that. I don't know how much of that is part of his game or not. So I think with Booker, there is a bit of I don't want to say learning curve. That's not what I'm looking for, but it's going to take some time for him to kind of get used to playing at this level with bigs that are just Big Ten or high major college basketball level bigs. And so give him some time, I guess, is the point I'm trying to make. So with that, any other final thoughts on basketball before we turn the page a little bit? And I do have some basketball question in my burning question, so we'll circle back. But before we get into football, any other thoughts?
No, we can get more of that during the burning questions.
Okay. All right. So we'll circle back to basketball in a bit, but we are going to have to talk about football a little bit here. And Michigan State losing its 6th in a row, this time to Minnesota. Defense, I thought, played pretty well for the most part, got worn down. You could kind of see it in the second quarter even. And then again at the end of the game. So unfortunate for those guys, because I thought the defense played pretty well and gave Michigan State a chance to win. They forced 2 fumbles right off the bat and set Michigan State's offense up right in scoring almost in the red zone those first 2 possessions. Unfortunately, the Spartans couldn't even get a first down, and so they had to come away with 2 field goals. And that's an L. Like that's a big reason why I think they lost this game. Is it's at minimum you've got to, if you get 2 turnovers right out of the gate, I feel like you have to have at minimum like a 2 possession lead. Like if it was 10-0 instead of 6-0, that's a big difference. And so that was disappointing. So I guess we'll start there, Aiden. Talk about the start of the game. Again, defense coming up with a couple turnovers, offense not able to capitalize. I think that kind of set the tone for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like the play calling on the first 2 drives by Jay Johnson were very similar, where it was kind of run, kind of, I don't even remember what the second down play was, but then I think both of the third downs were screen kind of just swing passes to Nathan Carter as well. So I think the play calling has kind of seemed to have gotten stale, and and like Michigan State forced 2 fumbles like right off the bat. So it's like, hey, you have field position in plus territory. You already got 2 turnovers. Like you're in the plus column there. Like you just took away 2 possessions off an offense that has really struggled to move the ball, and getting your defense off the field has really been a big problem for MSU this year. So the fact that the defense got off the field and you're winning the turnover battle, it's just it really is kind of not even as a fan, but just as a spectator of the sport, it is frustrating to watch. And then the second half just kind of unraveled. You kind of wound down, and Minnesota was starting to take some vertical shots and really just converted in the end. And there's nothing really more that I can say about this MSU team that I haven't said, kind of not only like from this game, just in previous games, because it does feel like it's the same story every week, where it's either blown out or they beat themselves by they get some turnovers, or they get some big stops and then they can't convert.
Yeah, no, for sure. It does seem like a broken record, or it's kind of strange because it's in a lot of ways it's the same thing repeatedly. And then in other ways, it's like they find new ways to lose games. So definitely frustrating for sure. I see the questions in the comment section about Sam Leavitt and Kate Hauser. I've got 2 burning questions specifically for the quarterback, so we will address that later in the show. Just kind of going to continue our basic recap of the game here. But to your point about the vanilla play calling, I do wonder how much of that is because it's 2 younger quarterbacks as opposed to Noah Kim, who we did learn today that, Kim is a little bit more banged up than maybe we thought. That's what Harlan Barnett said today, and maybe even more than he was kind of letting on to the coaching staff. And so I'm starting to question how much that factored into the decision to go into Hauser. I would think after seeing the way that Noah Kim struggled against Iowa, and the previous game would have been, I think, Maryland maybe. But I wonder how much of that factored in. Not that it really matters at this point, but it matters a little bit just because of the coaching staff. Like if the decision was made for them, we got to go to Caden Hauser because Noah's banged up, and it wasn't so much on necessarily merit. I do think that is a factor a little bit because it says a little bit about maybe Caden Hauser. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but the offense struggled once again. They can't run the football, and that's been an issue. And I sound like a broken record here, but ever since without Kenneth Walker in the backfield, this regime has not produced a running game, which is a problem. Like especially with a young quarterback, you need to give him the 2nd and 7, 3rd and 4 every now and again with your run game instead of just constantly being in 3rd and long situations because you can't get any push up front. That's a problem. And I would argue the next regime, that's one of the highest priorities. Well, retaining a quarterback, I think, is up there as far as priorities. finding out who the quarterback of the future is going to be is certainly a priority. And then helping that guy with figuring out just to be adequate in the run game, be average in the run game, because I don't feel like they've been average at all. They've either been really good because they had Kenneth Walker, or they've been really bad because they haven't had him. So that was, again, another thing that stuck out was just not being able to help your young quarterbacks with a run game. Any other offensive thoughts, Aiden?
Yeah, I just think, that the winning the game up front is, half the battle.
Sure.
And that's really important. And, whether it's a design run or a design pass, like you have to win up front. And, we've heard a lot about, kind of Chris Kapilovic as a coach coming in, and kind of how much, how much work he's done at other stops. And really, I think at MSU, you can see there's improvement, and you can see there's some improvement, but I think it's more individual than the whole unit. I still think the unit as a whole has really, struggled the past couple of years. And, I hate to, I hate to bring it up again, but again, Kenneth Walker seemed to have, hid all of those kind of issues for, a whole year. And then, life after Kenneth Walker has, really not been the same. And, they did show flashes in the Iowa game, and they showed flashes in the Rutgers game that, they pushed the line, and, Nathan Carter did well, and, they ended up losing, but it wasn't the O-line's fault, like, whatsoever.
Sure.
And then it felt like they kind of turned a corner, and then you go play Michigan, who has a really good defense just in general. And then, you go play Minnesota, and it feels like they're back at square one. So it's just really frustrating, but it's hard to kind of put blame or kind of put a pin directly on a certain unit or,
Sure,
group as the who's kind of at fault, because I do feel like the unit as a whole is just not, or just the offense as a whole is just not getting it done.
Yeah. Let's talk about a couple positives, because I think there were a handful of things. Simeon Barrow kind of getting his hand on the field goal attempt. That was kind of a cool moment for him. Obviously, he had an up and down week entering the transfer portal on Tuesday. He stays in the portal for a couple of days. I actually heard that Tom Izzo was a big part of him coming out of the portal and staying with the football team. I guess they had a conversation. And that was part of the reason why Simeon Barrow decided to withdraw his name and come back to the football program. And that's kind of an awkward situation. It's kind of when you come back to a team after considering other options. And I think it was nice for him to have that moment, just because that's a very easy rallying point now for the team to kind of. They're saying we welcome you back. There's like that, putting that verbally is one thing, and then really embracing somebody is another thing. I think like that play can be symbolic of that and help with that. I did think it was appropriate that obviously Barrow not being a team captain this week for the first time all year. I think that's appropriate. Him not getting the start. I think it was Derek Harmon and Maverick Hansen out there to start the game. I think that's appropriate as well. But seeing him part of the rotation, making a play like that was cool to see. Jordan Hall, once again, continues to stand out. He had a couple sacks, forced one of the early fumbles himself on the strip sack, and just continues to play hard and be. I saw on Twitter, I don't remember which it was one of the prominent MSU handles, but not using their real name. But they said, he should be a captain as a freshman, and I have a hard time arguing with that, because he. Between his effort and his ability and kind of what he represents for potentially the future of the program, he just checks every box, and it was good to see him have another strong outing. And I think Chance Rucker as well continues to show really good things at that corner spot since filling in for Charles Brantley as a freshman. So Yeah, just I guess your takeaway on maybe the two freshmen and as they continue to develop.
Yeah, I think, Jordan Hall has really improved and kind of worked his way into the lineup. It seems to me that, yeah, like him and Aaron Brule have really played well, kind of have been they've been some of the standouts amongst kind of the rest of the defense, just in terms of the defense has struggled, and Jordan Hall, Aaron Brule have done well. I think Cal Halliday is not really the player he was 2 years ago.
He
You really
struggled.
seen that, yeah. You've really seen that kind of the last 2 weeks. I think Michigan really picked on him a lot. You saw, Minnesota. I think their tight ends had a couple catches against him in coverage too. So I think offenses are really spotting him, and then finding him in the pass game and just kind of finding that mismatch. So I think, Aaron Brule and Jordan Hall have done a really good job with that. So I think that changes a lot for that defense, having those two. And then, yeah, Chance Rucker, I think, this with Charles Brantley out, this defensive backs group, they're all, freshmen and sophomores. I mean, Jaden Mangum had an interception this week. Dylan Tatum has played a lot. Malik Spencer leads the team in tackles. So this is really a young defensive core that, they've struggled, and they're starting to learn, though. I think,
Yeah.
You've seen flashes, not only in the Minnesota game, but the Rutgers game, the Iowa game, even the Maryland game. I think that can be credited to some poor field position, and Maryland had the ball in plus territory a lot. So I think they took advantage of that. And, but I think the defense has done, enough for the most part in, pretty much every game outside of Michigan and Washington, who are two top 5 teams in the country right now. So
Sure.
just for that, I think you can see the defense has improved, and they're getting better, and they're still young at its core.
Yeah, I want to address this question from Eggplant. Charles Brantley did not transfer. He was injured, I think, first half against Washington, pretty early against Washington in week 3, and he hasn't been on the field since. So, yeah, like I said, he was injured in that game, and he's been on the availability report each week, listed as out. But the availability report will usually designates out for the season if that's in fact the case. And with Brantley, he hasn't been ruled out for the season. He's just been out each week. So that's kind of his status right now. So again, we'll see where that goes going forward. So yeah, just wanted to give that update. So, all right, Aiden, we're about 40 minutes in. Why don't we move into our burning questions here? We'll get through those, and that'll be a little bit of discussion about football and basketball together. So go ahead and get us started with burning questions tonight.
Well, I know you said you had some quarterback questions, so I guess we'll just get them out of the way. So
sure.
My first one is it worth giving Sam Levitt a start at the starting job right now?
That's exactly one of my questions as well, like almost word for word. How about, like, I have another quarterback question. So I kind of want to lead with this one, and then we'll get into Sam Levitt's.
All right.
But to start with it, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how worried are you about Katin Houser's development and future as a Spartan? And then we'll transition from that into Sam Levitt. So where's your level of concern with Katin Houser at this point?
In terms of his development, I mean, he's still that was only his 3rd start. I mean,
sure.
Thinking about that still. So I think, my level is still not super high. I'd say it's still at maybe around a 4. In terms of my concern, I'd say my level of concern with him staying with the program is a lot higher. I'd say probably around a 6 or a 7 right now, just because of the uncertainty of the coaching staff and kind of the future, and obviously how the beginning of the season played out, where he didn't win the starting job originally and it was Noah Kim. So kind of the future, we don't know what it holds. So, if it's a
Right.
new coach and they bring in a transfer quarterback that, they want, or, you know, whether it's new coach or same coaching staff, if Noah Kim is back and healthy, obviously, because, we thought he was just, Caden Hauser just beat him out at the end, or, they just were like, okay, let's go with Hauser. But if
Sure.
he's been injured and now he comes back healthy, does he win his job back? Or, Sam Levitt, again, we'll get into this in a second, but, what if he really grows more than Hauser? So I think my level of concern with him staying with the program is a lot higher than his development at the moment.
Right. Right. Um, I will say, like, I'm a little bit concerned, just because we have seen there's been some suggestions that maybe the arm strength on those outside throws isn't what was expected of Caton. And I wonder where he's at. Again, I think you made it a good point about the whole less concerned about his development, more concerned about his future with the program. I think that's an important distinction there. And I agree with you on that, just because with all the uncertainty, it's hard to know who's going to be here. And now you've got a situation where you've got another young player right behind you. You're kind of maybe looking over your shoulder a little bit. Sam came in and made some plays and took Michigan State down the field. And I thought it's important to note that this wasn't your typical, the backup quarterback comes in at the end of the game and has a good drive. No, this was still when the game was at least a little bit in question. And that was Minnesota's first team defense that, Sam led Michigan State's offense down the field again. So not your typical backup quarterback, good looking drive. And so I wonder where he's at mentally a little bit here, if he's questioning things. And I'll transition us into talking about Sam Leavitt with kind of this thought of mine. You mentioned the play calling being a little vanilla and things like that, and I speculated whether that had to do with the fact that it is a couple of young quarterbacks. My thought is, Sam, with his athleticism, with his speed, and what he's able to do with his legs, that can elevate even vanilla play calling, because you make maybe one or two reads. If it's not there, get what you can. And I think he has a little bit more of an ability to do that than Caton. So how does that factor into maybe this decision one way or the other about either sticking with Caton or going with Sam and seeing what he can give to you? And with that, we'll kind of transition into the Sam Levitt portion of this conversation.
Yeah, personally, I think that probably had to be in the conversation just when the quarterback battle was between Noah Kim and Caden Hauser, was, that athleticism aspect. So I think that definitely plays a factor. And, we've seen Caden Hauser. I think I saw a tweet, I can't remember who it was from, but someone said Caden Hauser has shared time with, another quarterback essentially his whole high school career. And then, really, the Rutgers game was really the first game since, 8th grade football where he kind of got he got the keys to the whole offense and played the whole game without kind of worrying about getting pulled or, swapping with a different quarterback. So I think just in terms of that can change somebody's thought process. Whereas, Sam Levitt's a guy who, started throughout his high school career and, really didn't have any question or, felt any real competition kind of at his position. So there might be a mental aspect of that where, it could be different. So I think Hauser, I think he still should get a little bit more of a shot. I think, the Nebraska game coming up, I think this is another opportunity to grab a win. I think Nebraska has improved throughout the year. I think they're, way better than they were at the start of the year. And, they're definitely going to be favored by probably at least a touchdown, if not more, to MSU. But I still think this is another opportunity to give Caden Hauser a start. If he really struggles, I think then you go to Levitt, the next game. But I still think Hauser needs a little bit more time because obviously, again, like I said earlier, it's still only his third start. So
Sure.
you give him, one or two more, and maybe you throw Levitt in as the starter against Indiana. I probably wouldn't throw him in against Ohio State, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. So I think Levitt deserves a shot to start. I don't think it's next week though.
Yeah, I want to clarify something because there's been a discussion about how many games left Sam has before he burns the red shirt. I think he just has one. I think he's played in 3 games this year. There was one appearance early in the year, and then I know he's played each of the last 2 weeks. So I think he's down to 1 game as far as before he can burn that red shirt. And I think that's also a big part of this discussion because Sam was made available to the media. It wasn't this past week, but I think maybe the week before, or maybe it was this last week. But and I wasn't at that availability, and I didn't watch the interview. Probably should have, but it's one of those things that kind of got lost in the shuffle. But that's part of this. Like, does he want to burn his redshirt year, or does he want to maintain those 4 years of eligibility? And also, if you are confident, if you're Michigan State, that he's going to stick around, which I don't know how you can be without knowing who the next staff is going to be or anything like that. But that's a factor as well. But if you are confident, do you want to burn his red shirt, or as some have said in the comment section, maintain those 4 years for maybe when you have more of a team around him and things like that. So yeah, he's down to 1 game. And that's a factor. And I think he's going to have a little bit of input with that. Now, as a competitor, my gut kind of tells me he probably is willing to burn that red shirt. But again, you got to try to play it. You got to try to play it as wisely as you can going forward. So yeah, just the 1 game. How do you think that factors in, Aiden, as far as like should Michigan State continue to try to use him this year in a year that you're not going to make a bowl game, or is it better to give him one more go to fulfill those 4 games and then maybe shut him down for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I think that this is a really hard decision. I think for both the coaching staff and the player, because the coaching staff is really in question, and kind of that may be a factor. So, the coaching staff doesn't know if they're going to be here next year, which leads to kind of Levitt, which, is that a coaching decision, or is that, a personal decision for him? Because obviously the coaches and the players want to win as many games as possible, this season, and they want to win the rest of the year. Obviously whether they can or not is, a whole different conversation, but that, obviously that's the goal. So kind of it then becomes a personal decision of, hey, do you think, it's worth, using a year of eligibility kind of to take these next 3-4 games to try and establish yourself, put some better film, game film out there for next season, and gain experience, regardless of whether or not you're entering the transfer portal. So there's really a lot of factors that play into it. So it's really a hard decision.
Yeah, this is kind of where I've settled now after, thinking about it for the last couple of minutes. I think if you're going to burn the red shirt, go ahead and start him. Like, just if you're going to burn it, see what you got in the kid and just
Yeah, I
let him
totally
play.
agree.
So that's kind of where I've settled. Like, that's where I've landed on now for that. Like, if you're going to burn it, let him burn it, like really let him be the guy. If you don't want to burn it, then you continue to start Caden Hauser for the remainder of the year, in my opinion. And you can bring Sam in one more game. I would say either against Nebraska this week or against Indiana down the road. Probably if he, obviously it depends on how the game is going, obviously, but like one of those two games is where I would do it, because frankly, you're not going to beat Ohio State. You're not going to beat Penn State, although Penn State did look pretty average against Indiana just a couple, if that was last week or whenever that was. But so that's kind of where my mindset is. And then, so if it is Hauser going forward, Harlan Barnett did say that it's going to take a couple of weeks for maybe Noah to get back healthy again. That's kind of a factor as well. How quickly can Noah Kim get back healthy? And then if Hauser is your starter, hopefully within the next couple of weeks, Kim is ready to go in case of emergency type of thing, and then he becomes your backup for the remainder of the year. But I guess that's how I would play it. All right, so that's our thoughts on the quarterback situation. I'm probably going to write a story about that either tonight or tomorrow, sharing more of the insight from Harlan and the quotes from that and whatnot. But we'll move on now. I've burned up two of my burning questions, so I'll go ahead and let you go with another one here.
Yeah, so this second question kind of relates to the quarterbacks, but really outside of Nathan Carter, Malik Carter didn't play for I don't know what the reasoning was, but he wasn't there. So who is Michigan State's really best weapon? Because we haven't really seen a wide receiver kind of separate themselves. Obviously outside of Carter and Carr, they've kind of just struggled to establish, some offense. So I guess that's my question. So who's their next best weapon?
Okay. Man, that's tough because it's kind of been a different receiver every week type of thing. Like we've seen Jerron Glover have a good game here. We've seen Montori Foster have a good game. We saw even Christian Fitzpatrick. Where's Christian Fitzpatrick been the last several weeks? Like he's been kind of MIA. So that's an excellent question, and I don't feel like I have a great answer for you. Shoot, like who are you thinking? I'll continue to think about it, but who's on your mind?
I honestly I don't know. I guess that's why I call it burning questions. I think right now at the moment I'd probably say Montori Foster. I think that
you're probably right.
Just recently, the last kind of 2-3 weeks, I think he's been the best of the receivers coming out of the bye week, but really it's really struggling. And I don't want to put obviously the quarterback's the biggest job on just the team in general, but it doesn't do a young quarterback, regardless of who it is, even Noah Kim too, it doesn't do those guys any favors that they've really started to struggle kind of finding the wide receiver group. And it has been by committee, and there have been flashes shown by 5-6 different guys, but at the same time we haven't really seen one specific guy separate themselves from the rest of the group.
Yeah, no, and I've seen some comments about Trey Mosley in the comment section here. It does sound like like Harlan said, he's day-to-day today and media availability, and he said it would be tough for him to be ready to go by this next game. And so that's just another injury to add to a growing list at this point. And Trey was I don't want to be disparaging to him because he's a good dude and a good leader of this team, but he was kind of a really he slotted in well, for no pun intended, but he slotted in well as good as that third option behind Jaden Reed, Keon Coleman last year, and then Jaden Reed and Jalen Naylor 2 years ago. So so I think you probably hit the nail on the head there with Montori. I think he's been the most consistent of the group. And there's been a few comments about Malik Carr as well. There's a little bit of speculation about his absence this week. Now Harlan doubled down twice on the fact that him being hurt. He brought it up after the Minnesota game, and he brought it up again today in the press conference. I think it was unprompted today as well. But there was some reporting that it could have been there. I'll just say this. So leading into the game last week, there was talk of a guy who wasn't going to make the trip because of a disciplinary reasons as far as being late. There's been speculation, and it is speculation that Malik Carr was that guy. So take from that what you will. Not reporting that it was him specifically, just reporting what was kind of talked about a little bit this week. So it might have been him, might not have been. Also, Tunmise Adedele no longer on the roster, so was that part of it? Maybe it was him instead, and that kind of led to him maybe not being on the team anymore. I don't know. That's pure speculation on my part. Another unfortunate development because Adedele was one of your more talented prospects if you want to go just by recruiting rankings and things like that, but also a guy now who's going to be looking for his third team in 4 years, and so that's kind of part of his story at this point as well. So Eggplant, he's no longer on the roster. I don't know if that means kicked off. I don't know if that means him voluntarily walking away. We weren't given any clarity on that by Harlan today. He was asked about it, and his response was that he was going to keep that in-house between Tunmise and the coaching staff, and that's kind of how he left it. And we didn't get any clarity on that. So he's not on the roster anymore, and we'll see what happens with him as far as because the transfer portal window is now closed. He can't enter the portal at this point, and so he's kind of just going to be floating out there until the end of the season when the portal opens for everybody, and then I would imagine he's probably going to have his name in there at that point. So, just a couple updates there on the roster. We'll continue to move on. I take no pleasure in this next question that I've got, Aiden, but I was struggling to come up with 5, and this is one of the ones that came to mind. So it's a 2-part question. And so here it is. Where would MSU rank in the Big Ten West this year? Because they're tied with Indiana at the bottom of the East. We know the West is much worse than the East, but Michigan State has now lost to Minnesota. They lost to Iowa. They still have to play Nebraska. That's next. So where would they fit in as far as the Big Ten West at this point, in your estimation?
Yeah, I mean, right now I think Illinois is at the bottom, and I think you had them as kind of the dark horse to win the Big Ten West this year, and I thought they were going to win. They had the potential to win maybe 7 or 8 games this year, and they're at the bottom. So I don't know. I think if I had to pick, I'd probably say they'd beat Northwestern, but I guess that's not a guarantee. I think Northwestern, while they have, I think 3 wins now, have really kind of
4. I think they just won their 4th, but
that's exceeding expectations than what I thought they were going to be this year, because I did really think they were going to be. That's another program that has kind of been in turmoil the last 5 or 6 months. So just with that, it's hard to see MSU not being one of the bottom kind of 2 teams in the Big Ten West this year.
Right. Now, I think Gregory Clark brings up a great point. They would fit in with the Big Ten West because they have a pretty solid defense. Outside of those games, like you said, against top 5 teams, but offensively, they just I'm struggling to know where the points are going to come from at this point, because it's been really hard to watch, and so I think Gregory Clark nailed it on the head there with that. So yeah, I probably agree with you. I think it's kind of a toss up between them and Northwestern at this point. It's funny just because certainly not. not the same circumstances as far as like the reason why coaches were dismissed, but somewhat similar as far as like for off the field reasons. Pat Fitzgerald was fired. Mel Tucker was fired. I think Northwestern did have the benefit of at least having a month or so to prepare for their season before and not have it happen in the middle of the season. I think there's a difference there. But Northwestern coming off of I think a 1-win season last year, they're at 4-4 or 4-5 or something like that, and they're feeling okay about themselves. It just kind of speaks to the different level of standard there as a program, though. But yeah, I think that's kind of a similar bar, and I think you make a good point with Illinois as well. So unfortunately, they would be near the bottom for both divisions. And then just kind of as a throwaway, this isn't one of my, it's kind of a follow-up. It's not one of my 5 burning questions, but as things stand right now, who do you like coming out of the West at this point?
I guess Wisconsin. I think, they lost to Ohio State. But I still think they're probably the best team in the West right now. But I think Nebraska. I think Nebraska has improved. I think Minnesota has kind of regrouped, but I think Wisconsin would be my pick still.
Yeah, I think Wisconsin's probably the best team in the West. For those who don't know, I've got the standings here in front of me. It's a 4-way tie for the West right now. Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Nebraska are all 3-2 in conference play. Northwestern is 2-3. And then I forgot about Purdue. Purdue's pretty bad. I think Michigan State would beat Purdue. Purdue and Illinois are both 1-4 in conference play. So yeah, I don't know what their remaining schedules look like. That would probably influence my pick to who will come out of this. If there's just the most mid. It's not even mid. It's not even a mid division. It's just bad. It's just bad, isn't it? So yeah, I think I'm with you. I think I probably would pick Wisconsin kind of out of principle at this point, but it's not good. So all right, with that, we'll get back to the topics at hand and continue with our burning questions. So go ahead and hit me with your 4th, I believe.
Yeah. So this is my last football related question.
Okay. I got one more football as well.
So I guess it's not a question as much as it's kind of situational. So if you're in Alan Holler's shoes, if you're the athletic director at Michigan State, I guess when you go to sit down with candidates, whoever it may be, I guess what's the biggest appeal? Like, what are you selling in terms of what this program has, I guess, on the field, in terms of what players, I guess, are kind of your selling points or your appeal for candidates right now?
So are you talking like how you want to like build your roster? Is that
like okay. How is that like I guess roster building and kind of what players I guess would be appealing for coaches coming in?
Well, that's tough because scheme is so important, and obviously you want to recruit to fit your scheme. But I think like I don't want to like be disparaging towards the players that Mel Tucker brought in, and obviously there was some hits and there was some misses in the transfer portal. But I think like in that first year, you're going to have to supply and fill out your roster with the transfer portal. But I would guess what I would be looking for if I was Ann Haller was like, give me your 3 to 4 year plan, 3 to 5 year plan. This is how we're going to use the portal early, and then work into, and this is going to be our high school recruiting strategy as far as the areas that we attack. I think they need to get back into Ohio. So I guess that's the kind of the approach that I would take as far as, okay, yeah, we're going to fill out a roster with the transfer portal because you almost have to nowadays. And it is available to you, but you cannot become reliant on the portal. And then moving into kind of like, okay, and then our high school recruiting strategy, this is where we're going to go into some from our target areas. I want to hire this position coach who has good ties in this area, things like that. I guess that would be my approach.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's totally valid. I think the Ohio thing is really important right now. I think that, you know, it feels like the missing piece for MSU, since Mel Tucker has gotten here. So, he does have a couple Ohio guys still, there's still, I think, 3 players from Ohio committed, or maybe
Yeah.
2. But still, I think that's really important. I think in the comments, someone said, having that young defense, I think that's a really good selling point, that you have, you know, that defensive backs, all those guys, like I mentioned earlier, are all freshmen and sophomores. So trying to, retain them, Jordan Hall, it seems like Jordan Hall is really, you know, invested in, not just in himself, but in the program. I think he's a guy, that's, a centerpiece for that next coach. So I think that's really important. Um, yeah, I mean, MSU just got, upgraded facilities. We've seen kind of what they can do in terms of, the boosters and the funding. They can get that. I think finding uh kind of NIL, I think collective wise, I think that will just sort itself out through time, but also has to be something a coach is willing to invest in as well. So just kind of that in general. But I do think that the young roster, I think what, Tucker's regime had, what they did, kind of recruiting through high school. I think you have seen guys who came in as freshmen and have kind of progressed and gotten better, and have seen the field early, and done, they've done well. So I think there is, some credit to this current coaching staff that's left. Kind of, there is some credit to give them, but at the same time, there's a lot of other, kind of some problematic things that need to be sorted out.
Yeah, for sure. I'll throw out this question from Eggplant. I don't think you just have to exclusively recruit the 3-star guys who you think are undervalued. And that was a staple of the D'Antonio regime. But I think ideally you bring in a coach, and you have now they have to figure out this whole collective thing again, because now SD4L doesn't have the best of reputations anymore after the whole debacle before the Iowa game. So they got to work out some of those things. But Michigan State should have the resources, though, to be able to recruit at a fairly decent level. And so I think you can still battle for 4-star recruits here and there, and you can still attract those type of guys. I think what needs to happen, though, is you need to fill out the rest of your recruiting class with these 3-star guys who are undervalued and are kind of hidden gems. That was part of the problem with this previous regime that we're in right now, is they landed a lot of top end talent, but then struggled to fill out the rest of the class with guys who could almost be the glue of the program, as those undervalued guys who step up and develop, and player development is also a big part of that as well. So that's how I'd answer that. As far as you certainly need to fill out your classes with some of those lower ranked kids that you really like. But I don't think you would abandon those higher profile recruits.
Mhm.
My fourth question also has to do with the coaching staff or the coaching search, Aiden. So we've talked about Jonathan Smith quite a bit, the coach from Oregon State. We've talked about Mike Elko, the coach from Duke, quite a bit. I might have asked you this fairly recently, but those 2 guys aside, is there a third name that kind of jumps out at you, who you would kind of give serious consideration to, and maybe as a new name kind of emerged over the last few weeks, and now that we've been in this for a while, is there a third guy out there?
Yeah, I think it's hard. It's hard to tell, because you look at kind of some of those early names. I know Jake Dickert from Washington State. I think they kind of had a bit of a fall from grace. I think they're now
Yeah.
at 4-4.
Right.
Charles Huff, the coach at Marshall, they're 4-4 now. So it's yeah. So I guess the list, I think the list is about the same. Maybe take a couple guys off, but those names aren't as appealing as they were kind of earlier in the season, just because they started losing some more games. So I think that's part of it. I mean, I know a lot of people are kind of advocating for Urban Meyer, but I think another name, kind of that's of a guy that's a coach that's retired is Dan Mullen. I think
Okay.
he might be, worth thinking about or kind of taking a look at because
Oh, I think we lost Aiden there for a sec. Hopefully he'll come back in, but I'll kind of take over a little bit here and wait for him to come back in. So to continue, like my question though, I'm getting a question about with Eggplant about Urban Meyer. I'm sticking to where I've been with the Urban Meyer talk, and that is I'll believe it when I hear it from like reputable sources, and for the most part I haven't heard that. The most reputable source that I have as far as this whole situation is just what I've seen from David Harns. He's the publisher of Spartans Illustrated, which is the rivals.com site that covers Michigan State. And he's been pretty adamant that he does not expect Urban Meyer to get an interview. So until I hear some different things about that from somebody who's reputable, I'm not going to give a whole lot of credence to the Urban Meyer talk. Welcome back, Aiden. Got caught off right in the middle of the point you're trying to make about Dan Mullen. Yeah, Trevor Thompson says football guys knock out Aiden after mentioning Dan Mullen. So
that's funny.
Yeah. So I guess I will say, and we talked, I think it was the Michigan game that there was an ongoing conversation about the coaching staff up in the press boxes when the game was already out of hand. Jed Fish is a guy that you have brought up as a guy that you liked. I think you questioned how realistic it was. But what stands out about Jed Fish though as a candidate and or a potential candidate, and what do you like about him?
Yeah, I think just the way he's kind of built that Arizona program, he's done well. I think, he's done it recruiting really through high school. He's found kind of that mix of getting that top end talent and then getting those 3 stars and underrated guys and then developing them and kind of pushing them into starting roles. I think Arizona is a program that doesn't really have to worry much about kind of players entering the transfer portal, I think, per se, because when you have that 4-star talent and when those guys are recruited highly and then they can come in, they develop and they can play within 2 years, I think you're going to retain a lot of guys. And then when you go recruit those kind of 3 stars under the radar players who haven't really been highly recruited, their kind of thoughts about entering the transfer portal are different because they may not have made those connections with other high-end coaches that a 4-star or 5-star player would. So I think finding that balance, I think he's done that. I think he's found done a decent job in the transfer portal.
Yeah,
obviously, I think it's a little bit funny kind of the past week or two that with kind of the Michigan ongoing scandal that he's been linked to Connor Stallions as well. So there's that aspect. He did coach at Michigan for some time and then took the job at Arizona. So we'll see where that's at, but I do think he's done well with that Arizona program and kind of found the right selling points and kind of catered those selling points and kind of hid some weak spots, and he's really done well so far.
Yeah, that's very interesting about if there's any connection between Jedd
Yeah.
Fisch and Connor Stalions, just because I think, unless I'm mistaken, I think Jedd Fisch was part of Jim Harbaugh's initial staff at Michigan for 2015, his first year, and I think he was only there for the 1 year. Now, I do think, I want to say that based on the stuff that I've read about Connor Stalions, I think he was a volunteer for Michigan's program from 2015 until 2022. And then this was his first year on staff, or maybe 2022 was his first year officially on staff. I don't know. It's been a lot of information the last couple of days. But that's interesting just because, Jedd Fisch was in Ann Arbor for like an hour. So that's interesting. We got a question about who my top candidate or who our top candidate would be. For me, it's still Jonathan Smith. I know they just lost to Arizona this last week, which is another, tip of the cap to Jedd Fisch. But for me, it is still Jonathan Smith as the guy that I would put the majority of my, not as like a prediction, but like if I was trying to make the hire, he would be the guy that I would really pursue. I just think he has shown the ability to build a program. So that would be my guy. Any quick thoughts on who your number one would be right now, Aiden, before I give my kind of that third option?
Yeah, I kind of think Mike Elko is just the option for me right now. Duke is kind of, again, another program that I think they've lost 2 in a row right now. So, not as appealing, but I do think he's done a really good job at Duke still. And, he has Midwestern roots. He was at Notre Dame for a good amount of time. So I think, he's a coach that could come in and, understand the landscape quickly and find a staff that is built for, getting back into Ohio, recruiting Michigan, finding, that mix between blue chip recruits and, underrated guys to help this staff.
Yeah, and I think it is also important to point out that, Riley Leonard, the quarterback for Duke, him being banged up certainly has an impact on them as well. I'm not saying they would have beaten Louisville or Florida State these last 2 weeks if he was fully healthy, but it certainly would have helped. So it's just something to keep in mind. Like these coaches, it's more than just wins and losses with these potential candidates. So try to keep that in mind too, as the search kind of intensifies over the next couple of weeks. Keys to Wisdom brought up Pat Narduzzi. He kind of was in some hot water this last weekend. He kind of threw, intentional or not, he is up for debate, but he kind of threw his roster under the bus a little bit after getting creamed by Notre Dame this last weekend. So I just think you and I, Aiden, have been pretty consistent on this. We think Narduzzi is just too much of a shot from the past as a candidate. I think he needs some fresh blood, and we've been pretty consistent on that so far. As far as my finally getting to the answer to my own question here, but as far as that third guy, this probably isn't a name that people are going to like. But I tell you what, Lance Leopold continues to do really good things at Kansas. They just knocked off Oklahoma this last week. There's been some concerns about his age. He's 59. Like that's certainly not ancient. He looks older than 59 when you see him on television. I will admit that, but I do think Lance Leopold is, if you can win at Kansas, man, you can win just about anywhere, because Kansas, I don't think there's any doubt that Kansas is arguably the toughest Power 5 job that there is. It's not in the middle of any, there's no recruiting bases nearby. It's just a really tough place to win. So I would still continue to look to Lance Leopold, and you don't necessarily have to make a hire. You don't have to make a hire thinking about the next 10 years necessarily. Like it could be that 3 to 5 year thing where you just kind of get the program back to a respectable place. And maybe then you take a big swing at a guy. I don't know. It depends on, the coaching markets and things like that and how things play out. But I would say that Lance Leopold is a guy that I wouldn't dismiss just because of some concerns regarding his age and things like that. That's that's my thoughts on that. Okay, and we both have one question left. We're coming up on an hour and 20, so we'll kind of do this kind of quickly here. But each of us have a basketball question, so go ahead and hit us with your burning question for basketball.
Yeah, so my burning question is, with kind of what we talked about earlier with Jackson Kohler out, how can Xavier Booker see the floor more? Like, what does he need to do?
All right. Well, I think the hard thing is because you typically he's not going to add a bunch of weight mid-season. Like that's just not how things work. You got to stay conditioned and all of that. So, but I think if he continues to be a shooting threat, somebody who can stretch the floor, that opens the door for him getting some playing time. And then he's just got to continue to show some development defensively. Be a guy like as slight a frame as he is, he's still very tall. He's got good length, and so he can be a guy who can be a problem for opposing bigs as far as contesting shots. Continue to get better as a rebounder. So I think that's the path for him. Right now is kind of do those little things, and then again, if he continues to shoot well, they'll find a place for him in the rotation.
Yeah, I think kind of just in my mindset, he seems like from the limited time that we've seen him to be the replacement for Joey Hauser as the stretch four. I think he's gotta learn to rebound. I think defensively he's probably a little bit better than Hauser. I think Hauser struggled on the defensive side. But he's done well shooting three, kind of figuring out to stretch the floor. I think, that end of game center, maybe he can be that guy just because he can probably make foul shots better than Carson Cooper. So
sure.
I think there's got to be some way to find him to get more than 8 minutes against Tennessee. I think finding him, even if it's in kind of the 12-minute range, I think that's really important just to keep that front court fresh. With Mady Sissoko, and while Mady is a senior, he's still developing. And then you got those three sophomores or those two sophomores who are still really young and also developing. So I think just there's got to be some way to get him on the floor.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like it feels like he's too much of a talent to just let him ride the pine all season long. So it'll be interesting to see how Izzo and the staff kind of develop him and bring him up slowly as the season goes. My last question is a basketball question, but it's kind of all over the place. So I'll try to condense it a little bit. Just so after seeing the scrimmage on Tennessee, give me a couple areas of concern, Aiden, and then a couple areas that you were encouraged by.
Yeah, I mean, I think the rebounding is kind of something we've mentioned already. I'd say the turnovers. I mean, that I feel like I say this every year about
That's
MSU,
fair.
whether or not, I'm writing or saying it on a podcast. I always, in the back of my head, is like these turnovers. So I guess that's my area of concern, especially with kind of a younger group too. I think positives is just the lightning in the bottle that MSU has and can really create with whether it be Cohen Carr, whether it be kind of Akins, transition offense can be really good. It's probably it's going to come down to defense, whether or not they can get those turnovers to lead to the transition offense. But I do want to say a big thing is just the effort, the way that they fought back at the end of the game. I was really pleased with that. I think that just shows kind of how invested this whole team is and how good they think they can be and their potential.
Yeah, when you have that ability to come back and you've shown that, and I think they showed it in the NCAA tournament last year against Kansas
Mhm.
State. That was in fact, like the Kansas State game and this Tennessee like scrimmage were very similar to me. Like
Yeah.
Michigan State didn't get off to as bad of a start against Kansas State as they did last night, but like just that, like being able to go pound for or punch for punch with teams, that gives you a confidence as a player that like no matter what the scoreboard says, like we've always got a shot here. And it's one thing it's kind of a cliche to say that, but it's one thing for it to be a cliche that everybody says, but then actually have some like proof in the pudding as far as no, we can do this, we can come back. I think that's going to be very valuable in some of these tight Big Ten games as well as Michigan State, strives for a Big Ten championship this year. But to answer my question, a couple areas of concern. I think you hit on the head with the turnovers. I will say slow starts were something that plagued this team last year. So I'm hoping what we saw last night is not a continuation of that. I'm hoping they'll find a way to kind of nip that in the butt and get off to some better starts throughout the season. That would be an area of concern for now. And also big man play a little bit last night. The big men were very good against Hillsdale when they, had a very clear size advantage. But last night, just would have liked to seen a little bit more out of both Carson Cooper and Monte Sissoko in the rebounding department and the scoring department. Would like to see them play a little bit better. As far as things I'm encouraged by, I mentioned the ability to come back. You mentioned it too. Cohen Carr is just really fun to watch, and he's going to be really exciting all season long. And also a guy who I'm convinced at this point is going to help this team this season. So excited about him. And then this was near the beginning of the show, but Keys to Wisdom pointed out, I really like this full court pressure that Michigan State is able to utilize because of the depth that they have at the backcourt. We saw Cohen Carr in the mixes in this area as well, playing guys full court. AJ's up there. Tyson is up there, and he's a very good on-ball defender. He had 5 steals last night. So I really like this idea of letting these guys just get after people right from the tip. You've got some depth, so you don't have to be as concerned about foul trouble. And so I kind of like the idea of right at the beginning of the game, let Akins, let Tyson, AJ, let them get after guys. And then when they need a blow, you bring in, Trey Holloman, who Izzo pointed out as one of the bright spots last night. You bring in a guy like Jeremy Fears, who seems to be above or ahead of where a typical freshman would be. So I like that idea of generating more pressure with those guys.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a big thing that could be useful for them. I think, I didn't think Fears had the greatest game yesterday, but obviously, he's a freshman, so I'm not going to put too much into that. But yeah, I mean, Trey Holloman being, in the game at the end, shows how much he's improved. And then you have, Hogard, Walker, Akins. I mean, all 5 of those guards, including Fears, they look like they can guard, pretty much anyone in college basketball right now. Obviously, we mentioned the size that's gonna play a factor, and that's gonna be it could be an issue for some matchups, but at the same time, I do think just they defend really well, and I think that's gonna be a good staple for them, this season.
Yeah, I agree for sure. With that, I think we'll bring it to a close here. I think this might be the longest show that we've ever had.
Yeah.
We're approaching an hour and a half here, but again, it's tough. Wanted to fit in both basketball and football tonight. Appreciate you guys kind of staying with us for the long haul here tonight. I think we'll be back on Wednesday to preview this weekend's game against Nebraska. Back to kind of our normally scheduled programming with that. Next basketball game is not until a week from today. Next Monday, Michigan State officially opens the season against James Madison at home. We'll see what the Spartans look like this week in Spartan Stadium. Any final thoughts, Aiden?
No, I think we covered it in the hour and a half.
Yeah, I think we
Yeah.
we wringed as much as we could out of this show. So
Yeah.
Lions predictions. Oh, that's right. They're probably starting or just started now.
8:20. So
8:20. So they got a while yet for before the Lions. I don't know. I don't watch a ton of NFL. I probably will tune into the Lions tonight. I think they'll win. They're at home. The Raiders are not great. So yeah, Lions moved to 7-2. Wouldn't that be something? So
yeah.
I'm excited about the Pistons. As far as the Detroit teams, the Pistons are probably the closest to my heart, followed closely by the Tigers. So and so far, I've liked what I've seen out of Monty Williams. All right, with that, we're going to get out of here. Thanks, guys, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the Spartan Nation Podcast.